All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming out to our book club tonight. We all read or are here to talk about One Person, No Vote by Carol Anderson. And we'll get rolling with our land acknowledgement. You're welcome to put in the chat where you're zooming in from, whose lands you're on tonight. But Open Democracy, we here at the book club acknowledge that we do our work on Indakina, the traditional ancestral homeland of the Abenaki, Pennacook, and Wabanaki peoples past and present. We acknowledge and honor with gratitude the land and waterways and the people who have stewarded Indakina throughout the generations and continue to do so today. This is where we are in Indakina. We're in, well, I guess we're all zooming in from different parts of what we now call New Hampshire, but this general area. And on to One Person, No Vote. I'm going to pass it over to Kate.
Great. Welcome, everybody. And again, if you could mute yourselves to cut down on ambient background noise, that'd be great. So the book group is, I lost count of how many books we've read now, but we now have, we're so well established that we now have a bookmark for the 2023 books. And from the very beginning, it is sort of the three big questions.
Hi, this is Anita Bailey.
Please mute. Thank you. And that we sort of attach to each book. So where are we? How do we get here? And then what do we do about it? And some of us had seen Professor Anderson speak on a voting rights Zoom a couple of years ago. She's a really interesting, excellent scholar and writer. So this book had such a direct connection to the things that Open Democracy often works on, which are voting, voting rights, voting access, and also a just nation. So when we were in our last book session, we put in a link to a video that was happening right then. So this is 3 months ago on Democracy Now! And we will put all the resources together for each book as we do. So that was an interview with Amy Goodman on Democracy Now!, which I know some of you did watch. But we wanted to do another video since for this book group, unlike the other books that we've done this year, we're not able to get Professor Anderson, to come to our book group. She's a professor at Emory and she's extremely busy. She was very gracious about it, but said she wouldn't be able to attend. So we have a short video. It's Christiane Amanpour. And again, please mute yourselves if you don't mind. So it's Christiane Amanpour interviewing Carol Anderson for 10 minutes. And it was a year ago. It was June 20th, 2022. And she begins kind of by, we may not be able to skip over the ad. I don't know. That's Sarah's genius if she can, but it's not very long. And it starts to talk. Oh, it looks like she began it right there, talking about Juneteenth. All right, roll it, Sarah. Thank you.
Let me know if anyone has trouble hearing the sound. It should be shared, but here we go.
Second year now that is commemorated as a federal holiday. How significant is that date? Is the fact that the country is now celebrating it as a federal holiday, especially for you as an educator?
It is very significant. What makes it so significant is that it reminds us of how far we've come and how much further we need to go. Having that consistent reminder is the kind of spur that this nation needs, particularly as you see states trying to erase the teaching of real American history.
What role has critical race theory played in this journey to teaching Americans its racial history and its racist past, and on that road to a more racially just society?
I think critical race theory was a powerful and is a powerful analytical tool used in legal theory. But what you're seeing is the language of critical race theory being used to cover the teaching of American history, the teaching of slavery, the teaching of Jim Crow, the teaching of lynching, the teaching of the civil rights movement. It is designed to create a narrative of a nation that was born fully whole and fully perfect. And so you don't see the struggles, you don't see the inequities, you don't see the injustices.
How divisive has that come and turned into in terms of what we've covered over the last few years following the murder of George Floyd, the discussion at least of police reform? As we've seen more protests in the country, there was hope that finally the country had reached a turning point in at least handling and addressing this issue. Are you more optimistic today than you were 2 years ago, or not as much?
What I'm seeing is a consistent pattern in the U.S. where we have these moments of incredible movement forward, and then we get this powerful backlash, particularly in terms of violence and in terms of public policy. We saw it after the Civil War, where you have Reconstruction, but then you have this incredible violence raining down on the Black community there, keeping them, trying to keep them from the ballot box, trying to keep them from owning land, trying to keep them from engaging in their full American citizenship. We see this kind of backlash happening after the Great Migration, after the Civil Rights Movement, after the Brown decision, and after Obama. So what we're seeing right now is yet another wave of that backlash, what I've called white rage.
Voting rights is another important issue for you. We've now had 2 elections without the protection of the Voting Rights Act. 1965, we have 19 states now introducing laws to restrict voting in 2021 following President Biden's election. What is your biggest concern in terms of voting rights in this country right now?
My biggest concern is that we have a nation that is divided. We have states like New York that are passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, where it's really codifying and protecting the right to vote. And then you have states like Texas, like Georgia, that are looking at ways that are passing laws to figure out how to keep the vote down. And if you can't keep the vote down, then how do you maintain who gets to count the vote? And so you're looking at a way to subvert true democracy. This is where we are. This is what I'm afraid of. And it was watching Congress dilly-dally and not pass the kind of federal protections that we needed in order to ensure that the right to vote is accepted as the right to vote.
You mentioned Texas. You know, their GOP, the state GOP platform, not only floated the idea of seceding, but also supporting the repeal of the Voting Rights Act. Your response to that, and it comes at a time when even in your home state, Georgia, listen, Georgia had a record-breaking voter turnout at primaries in May. And so you have some Republicans pointing to that, saying that voter suppression really isn't an issue and that it's being hyped up by the Democrats. Can both be true at the same time? Can you make the argument that there are some factions of the party that are trying to suppress the vote and others perhaps that are just more focused on election security?
What we can make the argument is that there is a consistent movement to suppress the vote. And what you're seeing in that massive voter turnout is the work of civil society. It is the work of organizations that are knocking on doors, registering folks to vote, getting to people the correct information about when you can register, how to use an absentee ballot, getting folks the IDs that they need. And so to talk about a massive voter turnout without looking at the incredible role of civil society in overcoming the obstacles that these states have put in place is to do a disservice to the people who are doing the heavy lifting of democracy.
So glad we have you on because three major topics that we're dealing with in this country, you've become an expert at. You've written books on white rage, one person, no vote, how voter suppression is destroying our democracy. The second, race and guns in a fatally unequal America. You and I discussed that book last year at great length. And here we talk about another mass shooting in this country, several, but let's focus on Buffalo because that targeted a black community and that gunned down black grocery shoppers. How, you just answered the question there, but how do you move forward in a country that is not only plagued by mass gun violence, but also still in an era where white supremacists do have access to these types of violent weapons?
What you do is you learn that you never give up. You learn that you have to have the imagination of what this nation could be, a fully vibrant, multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious democracy. And you keep that vision in your head and in the work that you do. That's why you don't give up. If we gave up, then the white supremacists who are hollering great replacement theory, they would win. And they would turn this nation into something back to,
Joyce Megan, have you?
and we can't have that.
Well,
Where does your hope come from, and where does your optimism come from? Time and time again, this country is facing, it seems, one crisis after another, more racial injustice, more violence, more mass shootings, perhaps another recession on the horizon. For you as a historian and as a professor who's teaching young Americans, where does that optimism come from? Because it's so important.
It comes from the students that I teach. It comes from the history where you see folks who are looking into the abyss of slavery and they can imagine freedom and they fight for that freedom. You see the folks who are dealing with the hell of Jim Crow, the brutality of Jim Crow, and they are determined to be American citizens, to in fact live into their full American citizenship. And so when you see that fight, when you see that determination, you just keep fighting. You just keep going forward.
Even in the midst of an insurrection and hearings now that, the big question is looming. The evidence is there and it's quite damning. And yet the question remains, will it resonate with half of the country? Will it break through, not only about their views on one man, Donald Trump, but whether this country can avoid another insurrection in 2024 or years after, another attempt to subvert democracy? How worried are you that we could see this happen yet again?
I am worried. And that is why the consistent mobilization is so important, to get folks to the polls, to vote in such numbers that it can't be denied, so that somebody can't call up asking for 11,780 votes, so that you've got this and the laying out of what the big lie was, because they identified cities like Atlanta, Philadelphia, Detroit, and Milwaukee as the supposed sites of massive voter fraud. Well, those cities have sizable minority populations. And so what the big lie is saying is that there are only some Americans who are real Americans who should be voting. And so what I really want this January 6th committee to be able to resonate with is how we had a group try to overthrow the votes of 81 million American citizens. And those citizens were legal. Those citizens were in Atlanta. Those citizens were in Philadelphia. They were in Detroit. They were in Milwaukee. That's what we have to begin to understand and embrace, because what that was an attack on the citizenship of American citizens.
An attack from within, quite literally.
Yes.
Professor
Yes.
Carol Anderson, thank you so much for coming on, for your expertise, and as always, for your optimism. We need it in days like these more than ever.
Thank you.
So Olivia, are you going to start segueing people into the breakout rooms?
Yes, so we'll have a little bit more time for group discussions. I'm going to open the breakout rooms, and we will. Hey, does your group want to start to give a report out?
Say that again, Olivia?
Will your group start? I don't know who you
Yeah, we
assigned.
will, and they assigned me. So we really did try to do what you said, was like try to find almost, concrete organizational type things that we could do. Let me see where I want to start. So actually began with Charles talking about being a poll worker in New Jersey, and when new voters take their first votes, everybody applauds, and like there's this real celebration of the act of voting. And that was a thread throughout our discussion. Later, he talked about how the word franchise in terms of marketing is like, the franchise is your right to vote, but it also is like a valuable franchise. So use it. And I think it was related to that. I think Susan was saying it would cost money, but really using the power of media to promote how voting is cool, like make it a cool thing to do, make it desirable. I asked a question. I said, wait a minute, is my town the only town that has stopped giving out I voted stickers? And it turned out that was true. And everybody else was in New Hampshire, but my town clerk has kind of abandoned that practice. So we talked a little bit about that. And I thought, well, that's an action that I will take, is because I now have support from watching everybody else's hands go up in New Hampshire and New Jersey. That, yeah, I mean, that's just a small thing, but it's not insignificant. We talked, and we needed somebody like Olivia there to talk. We were talking about the part of the book where she talks about the NRV, being used badly to purge voters. So we talked a lot about that and the databases, the good databases and the bad databases, and kind of where New Hampshire is on ERIC. And so that was an action thing, is to just find out really where we talked actually earlier quite a lot about the online voter portal, SB 70, and the importance of that. So that was getting into the mechanics of things that Professor Anderson was talking about. And since so many of us were from New Hampshire, it did have a New Hampshire focus. And then we had sort of the interesting example of how different it is, our guest from Toronto, Canada, like, oh no, you just registered, you're registered for life. They send everything to you. It's like, oh, don't tell us that. So it was, nobody made an action plan for us all to move to Canada, but I'm sure some people thought about it. Media promotion, cool to vote.
And infighting is cooler.
Wait a minute. Another resource that I did not know existed, but is important, is that there's a young adult version of this book, which, yeah, Olivia has. And so this is good. We can continue with this. And then I think maybe lastly, we were talking about, well, the thing about hope was that there have been some pretty bad bills that have not made it through. And there's hope that people are caring enough about this to realize that voting matters and that it can have an impact. So we kind of ended by talking about how do we do outreach. One of our breakout room was from Manchester and talked about different organizations. I was scribbling down names again that are local: GSOP, UU Action, the New Americans groups. So the idea there is a sort of a tie-in where people are interacting with these local groups and just feeding into that voter information, like the League of Women Voters one pager or something like that. So to just normalize the interaction of saying, we hope you're registered to vote or will register. So I hope that's good enough to get most of the sense of our wonderful
Actions to take. Yeah, those are good actions to come from this book.
Yeah.
And I'm going to call on group 2, but I'm going to first call on Kevin, because I know, organizing a high school voter registration drive is a great action. And I know Kevin did that. So
Oh, yay.
I'm calling on Kevin to see how how things went in his high school. But then group 2, whoever is your reporter.
Right. Actually, thank you, Olivia. The task of getting a town clerk in New Hampshire to come out of their office to register is brutal.
Mhm.
But they've been kind, I guess I would say it, or that they think coming into a high school would be healthy. And we've been able to pull that off, although that has been lessened. We ran into it when we were trying to do it this year, where for the town elections in New Hampshire that are in March, that the state legislature had made some rules about the clerks giving notice as to when they were coming out, or perhaps even to inform the Board of Selectmen or something. So we weren't able to pull it off for the regional school that we had from all 4 towns. So just exactly as Professor Anderson notes, that just when you think you've got one step forward, or there are 2 steps forward, there'll be 1 step back, where somebody comes up with some very subtle or very arcane rules that all of a sudden intimidate a progress that's being made.
Mm.
But
What
I would
towns are
encourage
you
folks just
in?
the same, give it a shot.
What are the 4 towns? What region are you in, Kevin?
We're at Winnicott High School in Hampton, New Hampshire.
Other actions that came out of group 2.
I guess I will raise my hand, and if anyone would like to add, please do. I think among the conversations, there was a generalization that one of the things we need to do is to talk with one another. Well, as Curtis pointed out, I mean, he is someone who saw life in a different way, and we're happy that he did so. And I think he is. And yeah, I think he said that it was January 6th that really changed his mind. And reading the book made an impression on him as well. So, it is, education is so important. Excuse me. And the fact that there are so many governors in so many states trying to repeal the last century is very dangerous and unhelpful in terms of keeping our democracy. I'm looking at the 3 questions. Where are we? I think we agreed that we're in a mess. And today was sort of proof of that mess, or one of the proofs of the mess we're in. How did we get here? I think we all agreed in our subcommittee that none of us did this intentionally. We are the victims of history. And what do we do about it? And again, it goes back to talking with people, trying to inform them of what's happening. Those who are tuned in to Fox and OAN and News Nation and some of these other, radio programs and so forth will never know any different. So it is important that we talk with people without our arms folded. Anybody want to add to what I said?
Do you mind if I jump in?
Sure, Curtis.
Yeah, so we talked a lot. We kind of deviated from the book discussion and kind of just talked about the current state of affairs of everything. But I think a real thing I wanted to get across was the deliberate nature of where we're at. It is not an accident, it is not unintentional. This is a part of a plan that has been laid bare and enacted, and maybe not in the most masterful ways, but in an intentional way to get to some outcome that we are currently experiencing. And Trump isn't the catalyst, right? He goes away, this problem still stays here. So we have to figure out how to reach all the voters that did not vote or voted on the wrong side of things because they were told to and not because they're diehard fanatics. Because they're still going to be here at the end of the day, and we're still going to be living in the same country and in the same communities as these folks. And so we've got to get out there, rattle the cages, and interact, compassionate conversations, but firm and grounded in fact, science, and empathy. So that's my 2 points.
I'll point out that I have made our book readings a resource. It's one thing to read the book. We cannot retain everything we've read. And so I have pages and pages of notes, which slows me down, but it provides me with fodder for research later. And I'll just, show some of the highlighting here. And notes in black pen on the side for follow-up later. So you can see the black ink on the side. And so I go back and I look up, for instance, I want to know, is this person still around? What is this person still doing? Now here's a beauty right here. That's all yellow with ink to boot. So this is what I do when I read these books, and hopefully I can go back and follow up on the notes I've taken.
Yeah, there's tons of footnotes in this book too. So
Yeah.
we can dig deeper. Like this one, this gives us a lot of opportunity to dig deep. I just want to hear what actions Group 1 is encouraging us to take. Or if they want to share. I think there was a group of Wisconsin folks in Group 1 and some other folks. If you want to unmute and share your discussion.
Well, I'll jump in. I think we're Group 1. I'm not sure, but at any rate, we talked about voter suppression and movements and things being the same as they were in history and still fighting the same fights and being behind because we're the nice guys and we can't imagine the kind of things that they're doing to us. And so we're always punching from behind. We're always on the back foot. We're a goal behind. And I say that because my boys are going to win the Stanley Cup tonight. But at any rate, we have to, it's just like 911. We never would imagine that somebody could do something with an airplane like that. And they're doing it to us through state legislatures, federal judgeships, governors. We had an incident here in Nevada a few years ago where the governor vetoed 45 bills that we worked so hard on in the legislature to pass. And it's just amazing how much influence and power one person can wield if they're in the right place.
Others from Group 1 that want to add any actions that came from your group? Actions people can take. So.
Well, we did talk about voter registration, if nobody else is going to say anything. So one thing that was mentioned were students. And I didn't get a chance to say this in the meeting, but I registered about 1,000 people in 2016. And quite a few of them were students because we went to high schools. We coordinated with the principals and the history and civics sections. And I also went to the community college, which has 4 campuses here in Las Vegas, and University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And I I got some crazy answers a lot of times. I would just say, are you registered to vote at your current address? That's all you need to ask. I mean, do you need it covers everything. Do you need an address change? Are you registered, etc. But we did find that the schools were very open to us. Unfortunately, we ran into the holidays and had to shut down because we didn't have any funding for the next year. But it was very rewarding.
James, when you say funding, who was funding? Who was sort of
Well, it was a local charitable, a 501c3 organization here based in Las Vegas, and we're the battle-born state, and the reason they say that is because we were brought in during the Civil War, so that the Union would get the silver and the gold that were up in northern Nevada, and so it's Battle-Born Progress was the name of the organization.
So Lois, go ahead.
James, hi, I'm from Manchester, New Hampshire. This is maybe a little bit of Pollyanna, but in 2018, with the New Hampshire legislature passing some very good bills, our governor vetoed 65 of them. Really good bills. But this year we actually had some successes despite everything. So I'm just giving you that little hopeful story that maybe things can get better after all for you.
Well, that was a few legislatures ago. We have a Republican governor again now, but as I understand it, he has signed many of the environmental bills and social program bills that were passed during the legislature. We only have the legislature every 2 years for 120 days, which was okay 150 years ago, but that's something we need to change too, but I don't know when that's ever going to happen.
So Kate, do you want to ask for resources?
Yeah, I was just saying, I'm scrolling through the chat, which of course I've saved. And what I do after every book group now is just do a resource guide from all of good suggestions that people have given. So I will do the same thing here. It'll include links to a couple of other videos. When I was looking for the video that I found with Christiana Amanpour, I found a really cool thing about Carol Anderson's latest project, which is she's becoming a video director, producer herself, or film director, producer herself. And I've forgotten the name exactly of the project, but it's taking the poems of Langston Hughes, and I think it's like I America, and it's like profiling really interesting, amazing people. So that is going to be a resource that I'm looking forward to. I think it's like not distributed yet. So, and I know Sarah just put in the information for the next book. Mark your calendars. September 14th, Becoming a Democracy with Kristen Everhart, I think, and she will be here. By the way, these bookmarks, we're going to produce it, for the next year as well, the next 4 books, and then try to really get them into libraries and books. Oh, that was another important thing is an action is make sure that books are not being banned, that your teachers are being supported, that libraries are keeping books like this on the shelves. So the last thing I just will say to you is put things into this chat and we'll preserve it there, but you may have other things that you want to just send to one of us, me, Sarah, Doreen, or Olivia, as an email, like here's another organization to support, and we'll compile that for you. And then the last thing is similarly, as I said at the beginning, our books are now on a quarterly basis. And so we are about to start selecting 4 books for 2024. And I see things in the chat that are suggested, and I know people have ideas, and this is like anything else. Not every great idea will be the one that shows up on the bookmark, but we really would like your ideas, and we'll try to figure out an organized, maybe Google Doc system. So please either put book ideas right now in the chat or think about them. Again, if it's a book that we've already done, like Democracy in Chains, we have resource guides for that, and hopefully recordings with the author. So that kind of thing. Thanks, Curtis. And
Well, I'm working off of my phone. If you would mind, I take a couple seconds. I can't get in the chat. I see it come up, but history is the most amazing thing. I just finished de Tocqueville, A Democracy in America, and it is so up to modern things that are going on. It's always been the same thing forever, and we just have to continue the fight. But I highly recommend Thomas Paine and Edmund Burke and a lot of the people that actually got together to form the ideas for this country.
All right, Olivia, you're gonna, right? And anything else? Well, that's pretty much it. Olivia, do you want to?
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Sarah, did you want to say something about the next book? I thought it was Sarah that was saying something, but
It was
think
pretty
we were
much already
saying what
covered. Next book is September 14th, 7 p.m. Becoming a Democracy with Kristen Eberhard, and we will have the author here.
I'd like to say some. I'd like to say something if I could. Kate mentioned book banning, and that's a really important issue. And please do follow up and ask your public library and your school libraries about whether they've had requests to ban books, how they've reacted to it, what their policies are. And if you find out anything and want to talk about it or work on changing policies, contact me. I'll put my email in the chat. It's kbarnes@kenbarneslaw.com. And really, it's an important thing.
Well, book banning is one of the first most vital steps toward authoritarianism.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and I see Diane has a hand, but go right ahead.
Go ahead, Diane.
Very, very quick. As the Canadian watching from up north, your democracy is in great hands with people like you, and you just need to keep fighting.
Yeah, I love that.
With all of us, right? With all of us.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
If we
for closing
keep
on that.
fighting, we haven't lost. We can't lose if we keep fighting.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We just keep going. Yep. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
daughter
all.
just
Have a great night.
sent me a text, so I'm assuming